So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Cosmic Intelligence Agency's Astro Oscars update. Now, we've done this for a few years. I think about four.
I think this is the fourth year. Yes.
This is the fourth year. And of course, you know, in order to do that, we have the wonderful agent 141 in Los Angeles, Ra Rishikavi Raghudas, who has been an Oscars astrologer in aficionado for, I don't know, 20 years or something, it sounds like. Yes.
This is the 12th year. Yeah.
Oh, the 12th year. Great. And so, you know, when Ra joined the group or we met in India, you know, that was his specialty. And so, of course, you know, we're putting it out here for everyone to enjoy because it's a great way to, let's say, top up your astrology, know how to read charts, to know, you know, what kind of things are coming up for someone. Now, Ra, when you do this, you just use the transits, don't you, for the charts?
Well, I use the transits of the natal charts to the event chart of the Oscars. Yes. So the charts that you'll see today are the inner wheel is the natal chart, the birth chart, and the transit chart is
of the time of the
Oscar event chart.
Yeah. So, but I'm just saying, like, you know, if we wanted to really kind of, let's say, go deeper, you'd look at maybe progressions for the person and solar arcs. But we haven't got, just wanted to mention that because we haven't got time to actually be here for hours.
and some of the charts don't have times.
Right, yes.
So this is more than educated guesswork, but it's still, there's a variable in it. So you have to use sort of your intuition. And I try not to listen to anything else. Who's the favorite? Like, I try to block all that out. I can't help it, of course. I do hear stuff, but I'm trying to do it purely on the astrology.
Yes, beautiful. And yeah, and that's what's just so magical about it. So I'm going to share the screen to start off. So anyway, sorry, Ra. Before I do that, introduction more to you and what you're doing, because you've actually also just published a book on James Bond.
I have it right here, as a matter of fact.
Fantastic.
The Astrology of Bond, James Bond, and I'm happy to say that it's getting great reviews.
Wonderful. Yes.
This is it's about 10 years research. I was a Bond fan, but not a fanatic. I kind of looked to Bond to be, you know, when I wanted my Mars in Capricorn to come into power, you know, there's James Bond, the alpha male. So, you know, he was always the man you wanted to be and the man that women wanted to be with. But when I looked into it, I found that there was a real esoteric story behind Ian Fleming and the creation of the Bond character.
Yes.
Fleming may have taken his cue from an astrologer, John Dee, who was Queen Elizabeth's court astrologer. It may be apocryphal, but it's such a great story, and it's really possible. So,
and he called himself 007, John Dee, didn't he? Yes.
The story is that he signed his missives to the Queen because he was a spy for Elizabeth, with 2 circles and a 7 representing for your eyes only, and 7 representing divine protection.
Right, and 7 planets or Saturn as well. Sure. Yeah, okay.
So the book goes into all of that background, and Ian Fleming was quite a character himself. He was a spy for British intelligence in World War II. And out of all of that came the character of Bond. And then I go through the charts, not only of him, but of the producers and of the whole movies, the premiere charts. So it's a whole tome on the entire history of the Bond franchise seen through the lens of astrology.
Wonderful.
And available now from Amazon, or a signed copy from myself. You can contact me.
Great. Well, we'll have your details at the end, but well done, mate. That's a really great job. So so off to the Oscars. Well, it's very much related. James Bond. Has Bond movies ever won an Oscar?
Well, songs
Songs, right?
in
Of
fact,
course, they're epic.
the last three Bond movies have won the Oscar for Best Song.
Right. Oh, okay, that makes sense because they're always, that's like a really big part of it, isn't it? Like, you know, to get the next happening thing, you know, as the
Best theme,
soundtrack.
correct. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen. It's going to take over this screen. Sorry, here we go. And you can still see us. Oh, hang on, where are we? And slideshow, play from the start. Here we go. And I'll just get my pointer to point out some stuff if need be. So can you see that, Ra, and everybody?
I
Great.
can, yes.
Okay, cool.
Hey,
So,
handsome guy, love his glasses.
sorry?
I said, handsome guy, love his glasses.
Oh, okay. You recognize him, do you? All right. So, of course, yeah, this is how you spell Ra's amazing name, Rishikavi Raghudas. Where does it stem from?
Raghudas, well, I've had 4 different legal names. I was adopted out as an infant, grew up under a different name on my birth name. But when I took initiation into yoga practice, I received the name Raghudas, which means
Right.
servant of the light. And my guru, Swami Satchidananda, gave me the spiritual title of Rishikavi, which literally means seer or master poet. When I came to Hollywood, I said, you know, that's difficult to pronounce, so I want a more showbiz name. And I said, just call me Ra, like the Egyptian sun god, but also it's short and stands for Raghudas. So
okay. Enable closed captioning. Okay, sorry. All right, so let's begin. So Ra, this is the chart for the Oscars.
Indeed. What's the first thing you see here is the concentration of planets. The major focus is in the southwest corner and quadrant of the chart, which means what? That all of the planets are in one quadrant, basically, a couple of outliers. But what that means is it's a very concentrated sort of energy. Now, symbolically to me, with relation to the Oscars themselves, that tells me that there may be one picture that wins a lot of awards.
Right.
With a concentration, because what we're looking at here is symbolic. There's nothing here that tells us exactly who's going to win. What I'm doing is interpreting it on a symbolic level. Now, you will always have the sun either in Aquarius or Pisces. The sun here is in Pisces, conjoined to Neptune, which is Pisces ruling planet. What does that tell you? That tells you that imagination, kind of a non-documentary, great fantasy kind of story, may well win on Oscar night. Now, the Oscars used to be held in the spring, April. It was in Aries. It was originally a Taurus. It started off Taurus, then they put it back to the spring, and then Harvey Weinstein and his scorched earth Oscar campaigns were so long and intense that the Oscars said, you know what, let's just shorten the period so we can compete with the Golden Globes. So they usually have it now in the month of Pisces or even Aquarius, which is to say February.
Yeah.
We're into March now because of the pandemic. They wanted to be sure it was all over. So here we have the sun conjoined Neptune, which immediately says, and Mercury in the mix as well, which immediately says to me, some great imaginative tale would seem to be a favorite on Oscar night. Now, if you look at this, of course, it has Leo rising, which is great for spectacle. So you're not going to get a quiet film as being recognized, I think, on Oscar night. And of course, you want to look at the sun, the ascendant, and the moon when you first look at a chart. So let's look at the moon. Let's look downstairs. That is moon in Scorpio. In fact, it sits precisely on my Venus. so I might be feeling good on Oscar night. So what does that tell you? Moon in Scorpio. What would that tell you, Julia?
Something hidden, something undercover, something secretive, or even occultish.
Okay, great. Metaphysical. How's that?
Metaphysical.
Metaphysical and or to do with what? Other people's money. One of the favorites, everything, everywhere, all at once, has to do with taxes.
Oh, does it? Okay.
A woman is doing her taxes and is suddenly swept into the multiverse. But of course, Scorpio.
Well, there is the trine to Neptune. It's going
correct.
into the multiverse,
and it's an exact trine as well.
Yeah.
So, and in relation to the horizon, it's a square. Look at that. So that says to me, some great imaginative tale would be a favorite to win, but the moon is what always tells me the indicator of really what's happening.
And how it hits, like, let's say, the actors and actresses charts, because correct. You know where the moon will be. Yeah,
exactly. I'm divulging my secret here.
You've shown us a few times. Remember,
I always look at the moon and its house placement to tell me really what the best picture probably will be. And the moon is right on the nadir in the 4th house. What does that say? In Scorpio. That would tell me that something deep, either metaphysical or to do maybe with violence as well. You've got a couple of war movies here, which are up for Best Picture. We mentioned Top Gun Maverick, but there is also the Banshees of what?
Scheinert. Yeah.
Which has to do with some violence between friends. There is All Quiet on the Western Front, which is actually a remake of an original great silent movie from the 1920s about World War I. So we're looking at some deep stuff. This is not the kind of year in which fluff will win.
Yeah.
There have been years in which more lighthearted films, everybody's tired of the heavy stuff, life is just too much, let's go for something lighter. This is not one of those years. Let's look up to the top here and we see Mars as well, sitting at the top of the chart in Gemini, in a relative sextile. It's within orb of a sextile to the Leo ascendant,
as well,
and an inconjunct to the moon. So that tells me that something forceful, something, if not just magical with the moon trine Neptune, but something with some real force to it, could be very visible in terms of winning. But if you're going to win something, you got to look at Jupiter. Okay, where's Jupiter? Look at this. Jupiter is in the 8th house, conjoined to 2 other planets or asteroids, as the case may be. Chiron
and asteroid.
Chiron is what, a planetoid, I guess they're calling it now.
A centaur. Well, there's a group of bodies between Jupiter and between Saturn and Uranus that are called centaurs.
Yeah, okay.
They call them centaurs.
And you have Vesta, the planet that has to do with personal security issues. Okay, and these are exactly conjoined at 14 degrees of Aries. Now remember that Aries, again, is ruled by Mars. So your elevated Mars here would give, I think, an edge to a war movie or something that has to do with forcefulness, a battle of some sorts. Now, everything everywhere all at once has to do with this woman who's battling evil somewhere in the multiverse. That's a possibility as well. But there are several other films that speak about battles.
Isn't
So that,
Avatar, doesn't Avatar have a
thank
story
you,
about, you know,
thank you.
the military or something? I haven't seen
I was about to
it.
mention
Right.
that. It's the remake. And remember, in the first film, the humans, the guy defected from the humans once he found the beauty and peace that was being threatened in Pandora, this exotic world. Well, the humans come back. And meanwhile, the guy has formed a family with one of the natives. What's he going to do? Right? He's got to fight again. So there you go.
That suits
But
the fantasy and the, you know, that sort of fight, doesn't it? A lot, I think.
correct. And the CGI is just literally out
Out
of
of
this
this
world.
world. Yeah, right.
So,
Now,
but
what about this Saturn right there?
that's what I'm looking at. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
what that tells me that, well, there are several things going on. One, I'm going to contrast this before I talk about the Saturn. Let's contrast this to Uranus, which is the most elevated planet sitting in the 9th house. Okay. Now that's very innovative. And the CGI from Avatar and many of these other things could be a factor there. But the Enlightenment, the breakthroughs, it's in the 9th house, would speak to everything everywhere all at once. You contrast an innovative film with Saturn, more traditionalism, sitting right on the horizon of the chart. And what I would see there is kind of a battle between old school Hollywood and new technology. Okay? So are you going to reward an old-fashioned story, such as Top Gun Maverick, or would you reward an innovative, splashy, can't believe what I'm seeing, it's so unusual kind of film like Everything Everywhere All at Once or Avatar?
Wow. Interesting. I've just got a question. The sun, like, because the Academy Awards are often at, 5 o'clock, they start at 5. That's tradition in what I understand. So the sun's often in the 7th house. Yeah. Different planets, I think, year by year, we're getting it closer to Neptune or anyway. So, we can't say that every year it's going to be a story about relationships, is it?
Correct. But it always has to do with confrontation of some kind, because that's what drama is.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I'm a screenwriter, and you never write a scene without having some sort of conflict in it.
Yeah.
Why? Because that's what makes a scene. Is if somebody's just sitting there contemplating life, okay, fine, but come on,
you don't see that very often. Yeah, right. It'd have to be something really unusual, I'd say, with the sun, let's say a retrograde Mercury or something that will be different. I don't know, that would make that 7th house sun different for a year. Anyway, just
correct. Now, something else to look at here is Venus, which is in the 8th house, in conjunct to the moon. Okay. Now that tells me there may be some controversy with women and women's issues. And in conjunct is adapt, adjust, accommodate. This tells me there may be some dispute going on with regards to women. Maybe somebody that you feel should have won doesn't win. That also fits Uranus at the top of the chart, which is upset territory.
Are any women directors in the nominations this year? There are. Okay, I didn't notice. Okay.
Wait. Actually, if I'm remembering this correctly, there are not.
That's what I thought, because I was going through the slides and going, No.
But you have someone like Steven Spielberg, who you could consider an elder. That's Saturn on the ascendant. Up against youthful directors the Daniels, who directed.
About family. Well, family story.
Correct. Yes.
An
And
inspiration about his inspiration. I haven't seen it, but
that's
right.
the Fabelmans. It's a wonderful film. It's actually
Okay.
quite. It's
Okay.
actually quite moving. I was surprised how moving it was, but he obviously put his real heart into it. He discovered that his mother was having an affair of the heart with the family's best friend.
Oh,
And he discovered this
there's
not by
that satin.
not by anything that they said, but through his filming of his parents at a picnic.
Oh, wow.
And,
Love
and
it.
the camera was able to see what he couldn't.
Not see, right.
It,
Well,
it's a
that's
true
really
story.
isn't it satin there on the Descendant? Wow. And this,
Yeah.
I mean, I see that in a lot of this chart, actually. Interesting. I mean, he is a favorite, isn't he? Spielberg
Spielberg is
of the
one.
Academy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So his chart is very interesting for tonight. We'll
Yeah,
see.
wow. Thank you, Ra. Should we move on to the next?
Yes.
Yes. Otherwise,
Let us.
we'll go back
Anybody
to
else?
this at the end. We'll go back to this at the end because people will know what, after the main, after you go through the main pictures. But I've just added the chart for last year because you did this and we can just quickly look at it. And so the movie Coda won, right? Best Picture. And can you tell us what you saw in there to, just briefly?
Well, Coda, I would look. The story had to do with a deaf person, and I would have looked to 12th house issues maybe, and there wasn't anything in the 12th house, but the 6th house is full.
Yeah.
And the 6th house has to do with health issues. And
Mhm.
so Coda had to do with the adventures of, some guy who was just, he had to cope. And what's the 6th house about is, dealing with everyday life. It was a kind of a film that was kind of an art house favorite. I don't think that I saw it, but it had the ear of the Academy because it was about somebody overcoming their obstacles. And that had to do with what? Do you have the nurturance of Sirius at the top of the chart there, right? Which is about no matter what happens, I'm okay. The nurturance of the self. And again, the Uranus and the node in the 9th house has to do with belief in oneself. And so it was type of movie that appeal. And also you have the Sun conjunct Chiron, which is wounds or disabilities.
Right. And so this year we've got Jupiter Chiron, and we've got, I mean, this last year the Sun was in Aries, so it wasn't in Pisces conjunct Neptune. Jupiter was conjunct Neptune.
Correct.
So just those little things to sort of keep an eye on. Of course, you can rewatch Ra's previous predictions if you want to really study this. I think it was interesting that year because there was a lot of things also like Drive My Car, a Mars Moon conjunction, the power of the dog again about illness and, sort of on the land and, how everyone's coping.
Sun Chiron. It was a Sun Chiron kind of year.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on because there's a lot to get through. So I've just kind of grabbed the actor in a supporting role. These are the people that Ra's the charts that Ra's going to take us through. So I'm just going to turn myself off and I'll come back at the end of every segment. How's that sound? Just for a brief, or keep you going.
I'll just say next, and you can.
Yes, I'll be here. Of course, I'm not going away. All right. So just.
Okay, Brendan Gleeson. The first thing that we want to look at here is that he has Cancer rising, and Venus in Aries is square to the ascendant, and the chart itself has Uranus on the, well, wait, let's see. Is this the chart? Dublin. Okay. Yeah. It has, all right, I'm looking at the chart here. Why is this got Cancer rising? Oh, well. Anyway, his chart, the transits of
Ra,
Venus.
maybe it's because it's not a time chart. You've got a 12 p.m. chart.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, that is one of the dangers here. That's why I'm actually very pleased with, how accurate these things can be over the years, because again, with a chart without a time, it's educated guesswork. So if you can really pick something like this without the times, you're doing very well. I'm always a little amazed at how accurate this is because you just don't know. So there's Venus, and it's not, we can't tell where it is in relation to its ascendant, but it is certainly squares Jupiter Uranus, which tells me that he's got a shot, but he's also got the Venus square to well, what else was I looking at here? Mars on the moon. That doesn't really tell me that it's a great shot. I think that Brendan Gleeson is nice, but thanks for being there. Great to be nominated. Okay, next one. Julia, if you would, please. Next slide. Brian, okay. Here he is, Brian Tyree Henry. And his chart is also untimed, but we can see that Chiron and Jupiter and Vesta are sitting not far from his sun. We find that Mars, again, in late Gemini, is closing in on his moon. Not a great sign, but the thing that I'm looking at here is the opposition. He's got a bunch of stuff in Libra. And he's got Saturn in mid-Libra, 19 degrees. And the Jupiter and Venus kind of oppose that, it kind of sandwiches that. And to my mind, that's not a great aspect for winning. If you want to win something, you want a decent Jupiter aspect. And I'm kind of not seeing it here. Other than that, Jupiter opposing Saturn, great to be nominated. Sorry. Next chart. Judd Hirsch, he was in The Fabelmans. That was the one that Spielberg did about his own awakening. And here we see a real prospect for Judd Hirsch. He's one of the favorites, actually. So let's take a look. He does have a time chart. In fact, I remember that this was the only timed chart in this category. So let's look at this. He's got Neptune sitting right on his sun, and the sun is right there. So he's almost to his birthday. So this is a strong time for him, just generally speaking. Let's look. He's got Saturn coming up to conjoin his Mercury. Now I have that in my chart natally, and that doesn't deter me. Maybe things get delayed a little bit, but that's a very strong element for Neptune, or for Mercury, actually. So, but when you're winning an award, does that say anything? Maybe not. Let's look at where the moon is. The moon is sitting near his own moon. It's approaching his own moon. So he's almost to his monthly lunar return that actually occurs after the ceremony that night. It's by the time the ceremony ends, he will be exactly conjoined to his Ceres. I like that. I like that prospect. He has real possibilities here. Also, let's look at the Jupiter. Yeah, you're circling the Venus, sir. The Venus is exactly opposed to his Pluto. Okay, that's a big shift. That's a big shift in his life. He hasn't been highly visible in recent years. This is a big shift for him. Could it win him the Oscar? Yes, it's a possibility. Let's look at the next chart. Okay, this is Brian Keegan. Okay, Brian Keegan's chart does not have a lot to it that I'm seeing here that speaks to winning. Let's look at it because he's got a bunch of planets in Scorpio, and Jupiter is sitting in an inconjunct to his Mercury. That's not great. He's got lots of vigor because he's got Jupiter in trine to his Mars. I'm sorry, that's a square to his Mars. Jupiter is square to his Moon and Mars. The Moon opposes Uranus in his chart, so he's got a big T-square going on with Jupiter square the Moon opposite Uranus. Does that say winning? It's a Jupiter aspect, but I want to see where the Moon is, and the Moon is in Scorpio, but it is past his Pluto and not quite to his Venus. Possible? I would leave it at possible. Next chart. Okay. Huy Quan. You perhaps remember him as a Short Round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Well, he's come a long way. Literally and figuratively, he has grown up. And let's look at this chart. It's an untimed chart, so we don't know his ascendant, but we do know where his Jupiter is. And where is his Jupiter? 27 degrees of Scorpio. And that by the time the ceremony begins, Moon is almost right there. Not only that, look it up in his 9th house, at least in this chart, and you see his Sun is sitting at 26 Leo. His Venus is right next to it. So the Moon is making a square to his Sun and Venus and Juno as well. So he's being contacted by the Moon. And most of all, I think that Neptune sitting at 0 Sag right there and being approached by the Moon probably pulls it in for him. So I'm going to declare that Huy Quan is the ASTRO Oscars choice for Best Supporting Actor. Anybody have anything that would be different? You can write it in the chat. Okay, very interesting, very big race coming up next. Actress in a supporting role. And the nominees are, beginning with Hong Chau for The Whale, where she was the supporting person, the nurse to Brendan Fraser in The Whale. Okay, this again is a noon chart, so we don't know where the planets are exactly, but we can peg the transits. So let's take a look. The major focus here in her chart is in Taurus and Virgo, so very earth energy, okay? Now, a lot of the planets are in water and fire. So let's take a look at what they do in relation to her chart. We see that the Sun Neptune conjunction isn't really contacting anything in her chart. She's under she's a little past the Neptune square Neptune, what I call redreaming your life in the early 40s. The Sun is square to Neptune, but it's past it. There's nothing really there. The Mercury is in a square to Neptune. Mercury square Neptune doesn't have a great reputation for clarity. The major factors in Aries, let's look at Jupiter, Vesta, and Chiron. Where does that hit in her chart? They're only in conjunct. Her moon and north node and Saturn. Other than making a trine to her Neptune, but not exactly, I'm not seeing a lot there. So again, nice to be nominated. Sorry, not a winner. Harry Condon, who was in The Banshees of Inisherin, playing an older woman with whom a younger guy falls in love. Okay. Now, she was controversial because she actually campaigned for the nomination. And you know, it's not genteel to campaign outright, as Harvey Weinstein used to do, for the nominations. So she's been under some controversy, excuse me. But her chart is very interesting because she's got a lot in fire, and fire is one of the major factors going on right now. Okay, let's look up here. It's a noon chart, but let's look in her noon chart's 9th house, and we see Neptune at 27 degrees Sagittarius. We see the part of fortune and Pallas Athena also there, and we see the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which is always lucky. I have one in my chart as well, in Cancer, sitting in early Sagittarius. But Jupiter, Chiron, and Vesta are past the exact trine to the Jupiter-Uranus. So that's what pulled in her nomination. But they're past that point now. What else do we see? I'm seeing the Sun and Neptune opposing her moon in Virgo. Okay, that's actually very nice. But Neptune opposing the moon kind of has a bad reputation for delusions, or, you know, glamour without the substance. So, Carrie, love you. Don't think it's there for you.
Ra, I just want to point out that with a noon chart, the part of fortune would not be where it is, because the sun, moon, ascendant have to be aligned to just so people don't get confused. Okay.
Sure, of course. Okay. Stephanie Sue. She was in, I believe it was Everything Everywhere. And she has a chart that's very interesting. Notice that Pluto is, again, and this is a timed chart, so this is an actual time. She was born here in LA. Pluto is approaching her north node in the 12th house, and the 12th house is associated with Neptune and film. So this is very interesting because so many awards have already been given to Everything Everywhere. This shows real possibility here. But I want to look at where the moon is in relation to the rest of her chart. And the moon in Scorpio makes what kind of aspects? It doesn't really make a major aspect to much else in her chart except a sextile to Saturn, which is past. So there's kind of not a lot of contact here. The sun is, it's a trine by sign, at least, to her Mercury, but there's kind of not much there. And the trine to Venus and Sag is past. So what we do see, though, is her Jupiter sits at 13 degrees of Leo. Okay. Now, Jupiter, Chiron, and Vesta trine Jupiter. Could she win? Yes. Despite everything else, that's a major good aspect. So there's a real possibility that Stephanie Sue wins. Next chart. Jamie Lee Curtis. Okay. Let's look at the prospect here. Wow. Jamie Lee Curtis. This is a timed chart. So her sun sits in the last degree of Scorpio. Where is the transiting moon on Oscar night? Late Scorpio. Okay. It will be within 1 to 2 degrees of her sun at the time of the ceremony. If she's up for, well, the supporting actress, who knows where they're going to place it in the ceremony, but it's close. Anyway, it's within orb. The thing that I'm looking at here is Pluto, transiting Pluto. Where is it? 29 degrees Capricorn, precisely sextile her sun. That is what you call self-empowerment. Okay. Now we want to look, of course, at, where all the Aries energy is, and she has her moon in Aries. It's not quite there yet, but it's approaching. So what else are we seeing here? We're seeing that her Saturn sits at 24 degrees Sagittarius, right on her ascendant, which is 25 Sag. Okay, where is Venus transiting in the chart? 25 degrees of Aries. Does that look like a win to you? Real prospect. Okay. Last chart for Best Supporting Actress. Angela Bassett. Okay, Angela Bassett, of course, was the queen in the Queen of Wakanda. Wakanda forever. Okay, Angela Bassett. Let's look. She has some very, very strong elements going on here, and she is the favorite. More or less because everybody feels it's kind of her time. She's been nominated before, hasn't won, etc. So she's the sentimental favorite, but let's take a look here. Transiting moon, 25 degrees of Scorpio. And she has a bunch of planets in Virgo, which makes a harmonious aspect to the transiting moon, but the moon is kind of past all of that. Her sun, however, sits at 23 degrees of Leo. So the moon is square her sun and just past that. Now, if you look down in the third house here, we have Uranus precisely conjunct her Mars. Okay, Uranus conjunct Mars is anything can happen sort of moment. Okay, I actually call that the 9/11 aspect in the the more horrific sense, but in the positive sense, this is, oh my God, this is something I didn't expect. So what else are we seeing here? Her south node is also in Aries, which is where Jupiter and all the rest are sitting. And Venus is sitting right on her south node. Okay. And all of that is sextile to her ascendant. So very strong prospects here. I forgot to mention her Jupiter, which is sitting 26 degrees of Libra. So all the what was I seeing? 25 degrees here. The Mars exactly trines her north node and Jupiter. Okay, so is this a strong enough chart to win? I consider it a real prospect. My choice, however, is Jamie Lee Curtis. I think that her chart is the strongest, so she is my choice to win the ASTRO OSCARS. One other thing I wanted to mention here is that Saturn is at 0 degrees, Pisces now, or will be, and Pluto in her natal chart is 1 degree of Virgo. A Saturn opposition to Pluto, I just went through that. It wasn't fun. So my choice here is Jamie Lee instead of Angela. There'll be a lot of noise about this. Oscar's so white, but that's my choice. I think the astrology says Jamie Lee. Now we come to something very interesting. Actor in a leading role. I happen to see, oh, here's Bill Nighy. Okay, great. Bill Nighy. Who is what? He was Davy Jones of Davy Jones's locker, literally, in Pirates. And so Bill Nighy, he's been around forever. It's great that he's nominated because he's one of these actors that everybody's familiar with in so many different roles, but you know, he's never rewarded for anything. So he's nominated here tonight, and we see that his sun is in Sagittarius. This is a noon chart, so we don't know exactly where the planets are. His sun is in Sagittarius, and the sun in the transiting chart squares his sun, which already is a lot of activity, not necessarily a win. We're looking at where his his moon is, and his moon is in Virgo. And so we see that the energy in Pisces is opposite his moon, not necessarily connecting with it. He's got a Mars there at 24 degrees. So that's an opposition from Neptune and the sun. That's strong, but I can't call that a winner. So, Bill, we love you. Sorry. Great to be nominated. Paul Mescal from, I believe, the Banshees of Inisherin. Okay, another noon chart. We don't know where his planets are, but we're finding that there's some strong elements nonetheless. All that energy of Pisces sits where he's got Pisces planets. Look at that. He's got Neptune sitting right on his Saturn, and Venus is right there as well, and the sun is right on his Venus. Well, he's going to have a good time no matter what on Oscar night. Sun on your Venus, yeah, let's party. Okay, but we want to look at Jupiter for honors, and Jupiter and Chiron and Vesta all sit in Aries. Does he have anything that conjoins with them? He does. His sun sits at 12 degrees of Aquarius, and his Mars is there at 19 degrees Aquarius, so it's kind of sandwiched in between there. Is that strong enough to bring in a win, though? Where's his natal Jupiter? His natal Jupiter is in Capricorn, and it's at 6 degrees, and nothing is really hitting. The node is making a nice sextile to his Jupiter from Scorpio, but sorry, nothing there. Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell. Major thing about Colin Farrell is the nodes. The transiting south node sits, and it brought him the nomination when it conjoined his Uranus. Or actually, it's moving backwards, so it's not even quite there yet. But he had a nodal opposition where the south node conjoined his north node. So this is kind of a reward for his past work, as well as what he's done in this movie here. Do we see anything that would bring him these honors? He's got his Jupiter sitting down there in Taurus at 14, 15 degrees, which is what, a semi-sextile from where Jupiter is transiting, but that's not really strong. There is a trine from the sun to, well, actually he doesn't have a Scorpio now that I'm looking at it. So the major thing that I'm seeing here is that he's just going to have a nice time. And I'm sorry, Colin, but it's kind of not your night. Austin Butler. Elvis. So will he be up on the podium and saying, thank you very much, thank you, just like Elvis? Well, you know what? I went to a movie the other night expecting to see Everything Everywhere All at Once, and there was a problem with the projector in the movie theater, and they couldn't show that movie, so they showed Elvis. It's the first time I'd seen it, and what a performance. So you got to give it up to this guy. He was just spectacular, I think is the only word for it. And he's got some very strong aspects. And he is one of the two favorites to win. So let's see, does Elvis gyrate his way to the Oscar? Elvis never won the Oscar. Elvis was never even nominated for an Oscar. So could he win by being portrayed? Let's find out. Okay, first thing you want to look at, and this is a time to chart, is the Sun Jupiter for Austin Butler is in Leo. And that's very strong. I mean, what else would a performer be but Leo, right? I call myself an honorary Leo because I have Sun in the 5th house in Libra. So, people often mistake me for a Leo, but that's a Leo. That guy is a real Leo. But let's take a look at where the transiting moon falls, because I always look to that to see what's going on. On Oscar night, transiting moon is 25 degrees, and it is sitting precisely on his descendant, which means the guy is loved. The guy makes a splash. Where is the transiting Sun and Neptune? 22 and 25 degrees of Pisces, okay? So they make a sextile to his ascendant and a trine to his descendant, where the moon is sitting. Let's look to where Jupiter is, because this looks very strong to me. Okay, Jupiter's at 14 degrees. What is it hitting in his chart? It's making a square to Neptune and his nodes. Now, of course, in basic astrology, you learn that whatever planet is squaring your nodes is kind of a skipped step, where you got to kind of work all of that out. But if you do your homework, you are rewarded for it. There is Jupiter squaring his nodes. How strong is that? Is that a win? That's very close to a win. There's one more chart to look at, and that is Mr. Brendan Fraser, who gained, I don't even know how much he gained, to play this 100 pounds, something like this, to play a 400-pound man in The Whale. Let's take a look at Brendan Fraser's chart and see if he or Austin wins the Oscar. Okay, first of all, this is a timed chart, so we are looking at accuracy here. Here's the Sun, Neptune, and the transiting chart. Where is it hitting? It's hitting opposite his Pluto. Okay, Sun opposite Pluto, wowza. Neptune opposite Pluto. Either or, don't know. Could be very confusing, but remember that Neptune rules film. Okay, we want to look at where Jupiter is, of course, Jupiter and Venus. Where is Jupiter? Jupiter is sitting there 14 degrees Aries in that pack. Is it hitting anything in his chart? Well, it's a trine to his Sun, and it's a trine to his Ceres right there. Where is the transiting moon? On Oscar night, 25 degrees Scorpio, sitting right by the time this is announced on his Neptune. Now, if you want to look also, Jupiter or Venus is at 25 Aries, okay? And Venus also makes where is it? What am I looking at? Makes an inconjunct to his Pluto, but it also makes an opposition to his part of fortune. Is it Brendan Fraser, or is it Austin Butler? What else was I looking at here? I was looking at, give me a moment here. I see Neptune trine Neptune. That's what I was looking at. Okay, so transiting Neptune is at 25 Pisces, and Brendan's is at 26 degrees of Scorpio. Wowza. And Neptune rules the film industry. Now, that Neptune also squares his Mars, okay, by transit. Neptune square Mars. And where's his Mars? His Mars, did I see his Mars here? His Mars is at 14. So the Jupiter, Chiron, and Vesta exactly opposes his Mars. What do you think? That's a lot of transits being hit off. What do you think? Is that strong enough for him to win? I like that Neptune trine Neptune, but the moon is on his Neptune, which can be very delusional, or I think very apropos. My feeling is that I think that Neptune trine Neptune, I think it's gonna pull it in for him. So I'm gonna go with Brendan Fraser. Okay. Actress in a leading role, another tough choice. Ana de Armas. Fabulous in the most recent James Bond film, and in the sleuthing films as well, Knives Out, which also starred Jamie Lee Curtis, by the way. Okay, Ana de Armas nominated as being Marilyn Monroe in Blonde. What do we see? She's a Taurus. And there's transiting North Node and Uranus in Taurus. Excuse me, yeah, in Taurus. But they're not quite to anywhere that's really conducive for her chart. She's got the approaching Uranus conjunct Chiron, but it's not quite there yet, although Uranus tends to work quicker than its transit. The North Node is past her Sun, Jupiter. Venus sits in Aries. It's a noon chart, so we don't know exactly what her ascendant is. So we can't peg anything there. But the Sun, transiting Sun, is just past her North Node. She's having a hell of a good time. But I'm not seeing anything that really tells me that something is connecting to make her the winner on Oscar night. So there you go. We love you, Anna. We'll see you again. Okay, Andrea Riseborough. I actually mistook what I was saying before. This is the person who campaigned for the Oscar, and is quite controversial as a result. Basically, all it does, all you have to do is tell your publicity team, look, will you just get me out there and go for this? And is kind of considered gauche and not quite the thing to do, but you got to put yourself out there anyway. And she was in this film that, I mean, you just have to, you got to put yourself out there. So here she is, nominated, whether the Academy liked it or not. So let's look at her Scorpio. Look at all of this in late Scorpio, the moon sitting almost precisely on her sun, with Vesta in the mix as well, and Juno in there. That's very nice. So that might pay off for her. Her nodes, we don't know, of course, where her ascendant is, but at least her nodes are at 25 degrees, which means that the moon is exactly trine her north node on Oscar night as well. That also puts Venus, which is in Aries, in a square to the nodes. And Venus, of course, rules the arts and aesthetics. So she's going to have a good time. But I'm not seeing a Jupiter aspect that I would look for here to her other planets other than the nice Venus, Jupiter square Venus, that would tell me that she's a winner. So love you, Andrea. It's good to see you there. Michelle Williams, who played the character who was portraying Steven Spielberg's mother in The Fabelmans. Very moving. I was, what do you do if you have something to express in yourself and it's just not happening in your marriage, and you've committed to the family? Where do your emotions go? That's what happened to Spielberg's mother. She fell in love with the family friend, and Spielberg saw it through his camera and had spent his lifetime sort of getting over it. And the breakup of his family informs a lot of his films. Should be a tie, she says. Yeah, it's of course the famous tie was I think, was it Katharine Hepburn and was it Barbara Streisand in 1969, I think. In any case, but there was a tie previously in the Academy. Okay, so let's look at Michelle Williams. This is a noon chart, unfortunately, so we don't know where her planets are. But we immediately see that the South Node is conjoined to her Mars in Scorpio. And we want to look for where Jupiter is hitting in her chart. And we see that her Venus is in Leo, the North Node is in mid-Leo, so we're looking at Jupiter trine the node, but it's not there yet. She does have Neptune and another fire sign in Sagittarius, so that's good, but it's just on the approach. It's not there yet. It's still applying. And we want to see where a Jupiter transit would actually hit in the chart, and her sun and moon are in Virgo. We mentioned that this is not a great time for earth signs because everything's in water and fire at this point. And so there's kind of nothing really going on except that Mercury is opposing her sun and moon. So all of this is kind of, I think, great performance, but it's kind of not what's going on Oscar night. Her her Uranus does sit at 22 degrees Scorpio, so the sun does trine Uranus, and the moon is sitting there. So, strong. But is it strong enough? I'm kind of doubting it, because I want to see a nice Jupiter aspect, and I'm not seeing it. Next chart. Michelle Yao, another Bond alumnus, having starred with Pierce Brosnan is in his Bond movie. And so let's take a look. She is one of the favorites here. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is the favorite for Best Picture. She is the star of the film. Let's take a look and see if she pulls it in. Okay. Her sun is in, again, it's a noon chart, so we don't know where everything is, but her sun and Mercury are in mid-Leo. And well, she's got the sun and node in Leo, and Mercury is a little further away, but Jupiter is making a virtually exact trine to her sun, which is great news. And Chiron and Vesta are there as well. That's very strong. And remember, the node is nearby, so that ain't so bad either. Now, if we look at where the transiting moon is, we always want to look for some hit on the transiting moon. And I'm kind of not seeing a lot except for a square to that Leo. It's true that the moon is square Uranus. So that could be either an upset or literally being upset. Crap, it didn't come through. I was, just really had my heart set on it. Uranus by transit is also square her sun. Literally, an upset in the competition, or I'm very upset. But it's certainly something very fresh and exciting. Now, the Uranus is past the exact square. So we do have a nice Jupiter aspect. Where's Venus? Venus is at 25 degrees of Aries, and it is also trining her Mercury, Uranus. It's kind of sandwiching those. Is that strong enough? I don't know if it is. Her Venus sits at 27 degrees, though, of Virgo. So what you have is Neptune opposing Venus. The sun a little further off, but still in opposition to Venus. Now, Neptune opposing Venus, that's the dream or the illusion. Remember that Neptune rules film. Venus in an opposition is not the same as Venus conjoining, or as Neptune conjoining Venus. So does she win? I'm going to reserve my comments until we see the next chart. And that is Cate Blanchett, who has been considered the favorite for her role is in Tar, which has to do with a musician who has all kinds of odds against her, but she's being supported by her daughter and is one of these creatures of power, one of these people that you don't forget. And she's got an opportunity to compose a symphony and have it produced, and she's just a piece of work. So it's a huge characterization. It's a very splashy Oscar bait sort of role for Cate Blanchett, and she has won twice before. So if we recall, Saturn sitting on the horizon of the Oscar chart says tradition will play a part in the choices made on Oscar night. So let's take a look and see if Cate Blanchett has the cachet going for her this year. Okay, so her sun sits at 22 degrees of Taurus, and that is an exact sextile, or let's say that the transiting sun at 22 degrees Pisces is an exact sextile to Cate Blanchett's sun. That's very strong by itself. Okay, now her moon also sits at 24 degrees of Aries. And where is Venus? 25 degrees Aries. So it's sitting right there, conjoining her moon. Okay. We have Jupiter sitting in mid-Aries, 14 degrees. Where is Cate's Venus? 13 degrees Aries. Virtually an exact conjunction. That's three major aspects right off the bat, and it's a trine to Mars, to her natal Mars at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. So that's very, very strong. Now, this being a timed chart, Uranus is also sitting precisely on her ascendant. That is what you would look for an upset. So what is it? Is it an upset where everybody expects Michelle Yeoh to win and it's Cate Blanchett, or is she upset because she's been the favorite all along and it just didn't happen for her? Based on the astrology, and of course, again, this is all educated guesswork, and I've been wrong before, but just based on the astrology, I'm going to have to say Cate Blanchett is my choice. And yes, we were just speaking of this, and I see something in the comments that Pluto opposite the sun. But Pluto is further away. It's not really it's Pluto. I see. It's Pluto trine the sun. That's what it is. It's what are we looking at here? Okay.
So the transiting sun is directly opposite her natal Pluto.
Natal Pluto. Okay.
And Neptune, transiting Neptune, is opposite natal Jupiter, as Neptune trines her natal Neptune. So that's pretty big, with the moon, of course, on her.
Thank you. Yeah. What I try to do when I look at these charts is I try to see what exactitude there is in the transits. And I forgot to mention, but I have it in my notes here, that in Michelle Yeoh's chart, the Jupiter Chiron Vesta is directly opposite rather than a conjunction to. So if I'm looking at Michelle Yeoh's chart, why don't you go back there for just a second, if you would, please. I'm seeing an opposition to her moon of Jupiter. Jupiter by itself in opposition to the moon. Great, yow, so to speak. Wonderful. So she's a real possibility. Based on the astrology, however, I think I'm going to go with Cate Blanchett. And the reason being that I think that these are stronger transits. That's all. It's just a matter of guesswork at this point. Okay, for directing. We have Ruben Östlund, the Triangle of Sadness. And Ruben's chart has got some planets in Aries, but they aren't really close except for the transiting Venus. And we don't know the timing of his chart, so there is that. Other than that, I'm not kind of seeing a great deal here. We see that Pluto is sitting in an awkward angle and in conjunct to his Saturn. I think he was nominated based on the Jupiter aspect to his Neptune. Other than that, I'm kind of not seeing much here to give me any sense that he's going to win. It's one of these great to be nominated sorts of things. Martin McDonald. You got to get the little visceral out of McDonald. And this is for the Banshees of Inisherin. It's a great Gaelic name, isn't it? Okay, well, we're seeing a lot in Aries, so this gives us some very interesting hope here. His Sun, Chiron, Mercury, and Venus are all in Aries, and there is Jupiter in the midst. But it is past an exact conjunction to his Mercury and not quite to his Venus. We see that he's been recently under a Venus return. That's been very nice. I'm sure he's been enjoying himself in sunny California. When you look at the transiting Uranus in Taurus, it has just been conjoining his Mars. That's where I think he got his nomination from, a bit surprising to him. When we look at the transiting moon, which we always want to look at, we see that his moon itself is in Scorpio, but the moon is past his lunar return and approaching his Neptune. That could be nice, but I'm not seeing a lot there that would convince me that there's anything that would bring it in. So, love you, Martin. You know, you're right. Moon could be a little closer. We don't have the time, but still, the moon is not quite as strong as I would want it to be for a winter. Okay, here is Todd Field. And Todd Field made Tar, the movie that starred Cate Blanchett. Okay, now we see that his Sun and Chiron are in Pisces, so already he's got the water thing happening for him. Saturn, having just moved into Pisces, is closing in on his Mars, and he's just come through his second Saturn opposition, or his Saturn return, I should say. So he's 58. And Saturn return is often the reward for your past work if you've done the homework, or it can just be a hard time. But Saturn return brought this in for him. Now, again, this is a noon chart, so we don't know where his planets are. But let's look and see if there's anything else here that can help us out. We see that he's got Uranus opposite Neptune. That's nice. That's highly intuitive, creative. I have the square of Uranus to Neptune. That's more generational, being born in the mid-50s. But that's very creative. So I'm sure the guy is already on to his next project, and highly intuitive as well. I'm just kind of not seeing anything else here that tells me that there's something that's going to pull it in for him. The Jupiter in Aries isn't really connecting with anything else in his chart except the Pluto, which is an inconjunct. So, Todd, great film, not quite your year. And we come to the famous Mr. Spielberg, who is indeed one of the favorites. Remember that Saturn sitting on the horizon of the chart, representing tradition. How long has it been since Steven Spielberg was nominated and won an Oscar? It has been since Saving Private Ryan, which is 25 years. So, 25? almost 25 years. So here we have Spielberg's sun in Sagittarius. Famously, he was born with his sun conjunct the galactic center. And can you think of anybody else whose movies have been as influential as Steven Spielberg's? I can't. Spielberg is a German surname. Yes. Well, of course, his family fled Germany as well. So, he has a real connection to, he made Schindler's List for a reason. So his sun, 26 degrees Sagittarius, is being squared by both the sun and Neptune. Neptune square the sun. Other nominees have won under that aspect, but generally speaking, it tends to be a little illusory because Neptune does rule the film industry, but it's not quite as beneficial just as a personal transit. Spielberg's moon is in Scorpio. The moon, and he's got Jupiter as well there, as well as Venus. So he's going to have a great day. The day before and the day of Oscar night, he's going to get a lot of love. Is it enough to pull this in for him? The moon roughly conjoining his Venus is a very, very good sign. Now, this is a timed chart, and so we find Jupiter sitting up there in mid-Aries in a rough square to his ascendant, which is one of the few squares that actually works out to your benefit. And it's in a trine, nice sewing angle to his Pluto. Jupiter, trine, Pluto. Wowza. Okay, that is, yes, and Yulia is saying nodes on the moon. Right, exactly. The south node is precisely on Spielberg's moon. And what would he be rewarded for, really? Having probably the most successful career of any director in Hollywood's history. And that's South Node territory. So Spielberg's chart is very, very strong. And I will not be surprised if they honor Steven Spielberg, which would be an upset, but fit that Saturn on the horizon of the chart. Two more charts to look at, and this is a team. These are what they call the Daniels. These are the charts of the directors, the young directors, of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Okay, the first, Daniel Kwan, has his, let's look, he's got Venus in Aries, but it's only being approached by Neptune at this point. But the sun is, in fact, Neptune has been sitting on his north node. You can see it right there, actually. That is Neptune precisely on Daniel Kwan's north node, which means that Venus in Aries is precisely semi-sextile the node. And while we don't have a time for him, his natal Mars is at 22 degrees. So the sun on Oscar night sits in an exact square. That's a lot of energy. So, but Neptune is past its exact square to Mars. He does have a Mars opposition that he just went through as well. And so again, that's a lot of energy right there. That's exuberance. And they just won. The team just won the Spirit Awards. So he's up, he's hyped, he's on it. He can't quite believe everything that's going on. His Jupiter sits at 24 degrees of Aries. And what do we find there? We find Venus sitting right there. Okay, that sounds like a winner. Let's look at his partner and see. Daniel Scheinert. Okay. And Daniel Scheinert has, according to my notes, Venus precisely trine his natal Uranus. Where is his natal Uranus? His natal Uranus is at 25 Sagittarius, and then that means that Mars is also directly opposite his Uranus, and Venus, by virtue of being sextile to Mars, makes an exact trine to Uranus. That's good news just by itself. His natal moon, we don't have a time for him, so we don't know where it is, but it's in mid-Libra somewhere, or mid to late Libra, which means that it could well be in an opposition. If you're born in the afternoon, Venus would be making an opposition to his moon, which someone was just saying for someone else's chart. So I want to look at Saturn in relation to his chart, because Saturn is the work. If you've done the work, and I'm not seeing a real connection there, except that I see Venus here in his chart at 25 degrees of Taurus. And what that means is the moon makes an opposition to his Venus. So we have Venus opposite his moon, and his the transiting moon opposite his Venus. Now, in relation to his partner's chart, does that look like a winner? I kind of think so. So I'm thinking that the Daniels are going to pull it in. Stephen, Lifetime Achievement Award sometime soon. Okay, best picture. Here we are. We're at the end of the ceremony. We have my notes tell us what each picture is about. Women Talking. Women Talking is about a group of women in a Mennonite community who meet to talk about their feelings and decide what to do after being systematically raped. That's hard subject matter. Now, at this point, we want to, of course, go back to the OSCARS chart, where we see Saturn sitting on the horizon of the chart, and all that war energy with the elevated Mars and Uranus. So it's a heavy topic. Is it enough? It's one in which the female director probably should have been nominated and was not. Already there's dissent about it. Is it enough to pull it in? I think not. Next slide. Avatar. Okay. We have seen in the Oscar chart the fact that Sun Neptune means fantasy rules these days. Creative imagination is a big part of winning films. And remember that the moon in the Oscar chart is in the 4th house of family in Scorpio. And so this is a fight about the home, literally the home. Is it enough to pull it in? Avatar is about Jack Sully, the human, and the Neytiri, the Pandorian, who form a family, but must leave when their paradise is threatened, including from humans again. Is it enough? I think James Cameron has done magnificent work. He's a horse like me. He was born 2 months before me, 1954. He's a Leo, remember, king of the world. Is it enough? It's popular. It's made tons of money. It's the third. He's got 3 of the top 4 films in history in terms of money making. I kind of think this is not his year, though, to win the Best Picture. Triangle of Sadness. This is about, this is a funny premise. This is about two influencers, social media influencers, who are invited on a luxury cruise along with out-of-touch rich people. And unexpected things occur and a brutal storm hits the ship. Okay, what are they going to do? It's kind of like what? Poseidon Adventure meets The Great Gatsby, you know? So it's a satire, it's a social satire. But did we see anything in the Oscar chart that really said social satire this year? Scorpio, Moon in Scorpio has a dry sense of humor, but probably not a year for satire. So, sorry. Elvis. Here he is, Austin Butler as Elvis. I thought Tom Hanks did a hell of a job as an over-the-top Colonel Parker. It was very strange to see. He kind of disappeared into that. You're going, that's Tom Hanks? But Austin Butler became Elvis. Now, Neptune, remember, also rules music. So are we thinking that a musical or a film about a musician may win this year, Sun conjunct Neptune? My view is that it is probably not the year of a biopic, because a biopic is more, it's not as fantasy oriented as the Sun Neptune, although as we're saying, Sun Neptune is musical. So I'm going to give it a pass based on that. Tar. Okay, this is that film that we were mentioning before about this renowned musician, Lydia Tarr, who's about to record the symphony that will make her a star, but everything conspires against her except for her supportive daughter. Well, this is one of those films in which the star carries the movie, such as Elvis and Blanchett as Tar in this film. And we can recall the Freddie Mercury movie, Bohemian Rhapsody, was basically carried by Rami. It wasn't a great film, but he was so great that he won the Best Actor Oscar. But the film did not. And based on this and the starring role not being the whole film, I think Blanchett is great, but probably not the Best Picture winner. Banshees of Scheinert. Now, remember that the Sun and Neptune are in the 7th house of relationships. This is one of those films that has to do with relationships, with one guy saying, screw this, I'm not your friend anymore. And the other guy is going, we've been friends for a lifetime. What's this about? And no matter what happens, the guy is not going to come back to him as a friend. And so this is a very human drama. And the moon is in Scorpio, which has to do with deep subconscious stuff and maybe some violence. And things do happen in this movie. So the themes are there in the Oscar chart that say the Banshees of Inisherin could win. Will it win? It would be an upset. And remember that Uranus is elevated in the Oscars chart. So there's that. Next slide, please. The Fabelmans. We've talked about this. The Fabelmans is Steven Spielberg's semi-autobiographical story. Of course, he had to add in some elements, to make the movie, but it's basically a story he sat on for 45, 50 years. He just couldn't bring himself emotionally to tell until now. I found it a very moving film. It's very emotional. You really feel this movie. And it has been the favorite up until just recently. So it would not surprise me. And it's a story about family. And remember the moon in the fourth house in Scorpio, deep stuff. It does suit the fourth house moon a lot. Yes, I agree with that. So there is a real possibility that this film can win. All Quiet on the Western Front. Okay. This is a remake of a silent movie that was made in the 1920s about German young men enlisting to fight in World War I, the Great War, the war to end all wars, as they were saying at the time, and discover the brutality of real war and the lies of political propaganda. So it's an anti-war movie based on showing the realities of war. If we recall that there's a major Aries aspect going on now, that Mars is elevated, and the moon in Scorpio does rule violence, and that this movie won actually the BAFTA award as Best Picture, is there a possibility that this film could win? The answer is yes, but I'm not seeing it. That's my answer. I think that it does not quite fit as well as some of the other films, astrologically speaking. Now, here's my favorite film of the year. You wouldn't expect me, a metaphysician, to like what is basically a military propaganda film, but I'm a screenwriter, and I think this movie hit every single beat. And it's fabulous to see in a big theater. And it's a very popular movie. And my view, I was saying this to Yulia before the presentation here, the Academy would do itself a favor by awarding Top Gun Maverick Best Picture. And the reason for this is that in Middle America, people want to go and see movies and have a popular movie win, and they'll tune in to see it win. The last time this happened was the Lord of the Rings movies, and before that, Titanic, speaking of James Cameron. If they want ratings for their telecast, Top Gun should win. Will it win? Saturn sitting on the horizon of the chart, elevated Mars, moon in Scorpio, in the fourth house of family, and he's got to deal with his relationship, seventh house, Sun, Neptune, with Goose's son, who has got a grudge against him. Will it win? I think it was a great film. I'm not seeing it. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Okay, remember the stellium in the ninth house. We have Uranus, the most elevated chart in the, or elevated planet in the chart. Okay, yes, Julia is mentioning the Neptunian aspect of this movie. Well, it's Sun Neptune. It's cosmic, that's for sure. But it's also got a great amount of CGI and a lot of quick cutting, I noticed from the trailer, which is very Uranian, very quick, very quick, very quick. And remember, the Mars energy is right to the top of the chart, and she's got to fight a battle apparently in the multiverse that she didn't plan on. And here's this poor woman just sitting and doing her taxes. What sign rules taxes? Scorpio. Where is the moon on Oscar night? Scorpio. Based on everything that I'm seeing, and not coincidentally the fact that it's won everything up to this point, but just the pure astrology of it, I am predicting that Everything Everywhere All at Once will win the Oscar for Best Picture. Let's take one more look at the Oscar chart to see if we can find it here. Now, you will notice that the end of the telecast is depicted on the right. Okay, this is approximately 8:30 or so. It's supposed to go 3 hours, never does. So we're looking about 8:30. So what do we find here? We find Jupiter, Chiron, and Vesta sitting right on the horizon of the chart with Libra rising. Okay. And Libra has to do with what? Relationships. The moon is in the second house at 27 degrees. What did we see at 27 degrees? We saw something, I think, in Michelle Yeoh's chart, 27. So whether or not she actually wins Best Actress, I think the film is pretty much set up to win. We'll notice that Pluto is in the fourth house here, and that's another indication of power with regards to not just family, but core issues. Let's see, my screen is actually kind of not giving me, I can't move it over here. So, but I remember that all this eighth house energy is right up there. Sixth and seventh house energy now. So sixth house is what? It's mundane work. And this woman is just sitting there doing her taxes. So based on this, am I seeing it? I like the Jupiter though. You know, the Jupiter is a big movie. A big movie. Could this mean Avatar, which is a big movie? Could it mean Top Gun Maverick? Yes, it could, actually, because of the wound that needs healing. It's a relationship wound that needs healing. But Saturn in the fifth house says, and it's in Pisces, which of course is the fantasy element, and Mercury is trine the midheaven at this point. I'm still going to say Everything Everywhere is my final choice. I think that there is room, however, for an upset based on Uranus on the left side chart here being elevated. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think it's the closest film that fits the chart. Now, a few years ago, just to show you that astrology by itself doesn't always predict, I thought that La La Land had the closest fit to the chart, and it famously lost was the hidden envelope there. Poor Warren Beatty just didn't know what was going on. But La La Land fit the astrology best. I think this movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, fits the ninth house stellium best. I think it's going to win. So these are my best Astro Oscars guesses, and we'll take it from here.
Fantastic, Ra. Wow, good effort. Amazing. Thank you so much. Everyone's saying great. There's a lot to go back on if you want to do more and watch the recording. Let's just sort of field a few of the questions that have come in. Some great comments from those on the Zoom webinar. Andrea is saying the ruler of the ascendant in the end chart is Venus. It starts off being the sun in Leo ruling the beginning chart, but by the end we've got Venus, Libra rising, and Venus is in detriment in the seventh. That could be maybe not the favorite wins, which is good comment. Yeah, not the favorite. What do you think the favorite is? Top Gun. Like not your pick, but the favorite to win, or Fableman.
Top Gun is, well, The Fablemans was considered a favorite previously. That is a very, very distinctly a relationship-oriented movie.
Yeah.
Top Gun Maverick is a relationship movie disguised as a mission, because it's about his Cruise's character's relationship, Maverick's relationship to Goose's son.
Yep.
It's very, very much to do with that. And again, my own personal view is that it hit every beat. It's a very popular film, fabulous to see in a big theater, and the Academy would do themselves a favor to award it Best Picture. Nobody would regret it.
Okay.
And I don't think you can say that about too many movies.
Yeah.
But I do think that the traditional aspect, while strong, is only secondary to the Iranian aspect, which is more elevated, and the sun Neptune, which seems to fit more of everything everywhere better in my
it's
humble
the perfect title for the Neptune sun, isn't it? Everywhere, everything all at once. I love it.
And the Banshees of Inisherin is also a relationship movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot to, well, do your own predictions. Write it into us or put it on a post or on the video on Facebook if you have other predictions. Just two of the questions here. CAO is asking, does your bi-will analysis work for other cases like sports events, horse racing, and winning a prize?
Astrology works. Horary charts tell you the story. The event chart that we're seeing here is a horary chart for 5 p.m. And these things work. Have I explored these other things? Yes, I've predicted Super Bowls and like that, but informally. Have I gone to Vegas and actually put my predictions on the line? Not yet.
Yeah.
This is fun because I don't have anybody, on my shoulder saying, if this doesn't come through, you're in trouble.
Right. Well, just the quick look at the horary. Okay, the sun rules the ascendant, so we're looking at the sun for telling the story mostly, and the sun's next aspect. And of course, it's very close to Neptune, but because in traditional horary you don't use Neptune, of course you know it's there. The next aspect that is happening is to Mars and from the moon. Right. And the moon, they always say, has the last say. So that's just something to keep in mind. So anyway, so that brings up the themes you talked about, the Mars in Gemini, the relationship aspects is very strong there. And, some kind of battle between that with the moon in Scorpio. Sort of coming up to, well, it's actually past, it's past the sextile to the sun, right? Right. All right, wow, well, we better let you go, Ra. It's really great to have your work out there like this, and being so passionate on this subject and inviting us to the Oscars, to the movies.
It's fun. It's fun. It's the 12th year that I've done this. I've got the rep for it. It's a way to have fun with astrology without being too shallow about it, because these things do work.
Yeah.
It's something that everybody, a lot of people who are insiders don't know how to predict something like this.
Yeah.
And astrology gives us clues. And first year I did this, I knew a Hollywood manager who said, do this on my website and see what happens. I said, great. I got 7 out of 7. He wanted to book me on Jimmy Kimmel. Kimmel didn't like astrology, apparently, so he turned it down. But over the past 12 years, I've got an 85% accuracy rate, which tells you that this stuff does work.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, can it be the interpretation? Sure, because astrologers get things wrong. They have their filters, whatever, but the astrology always works.
Yeah. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I think if you really want to kind of go deeper into this and, you know, do your practice and work, add the solar arcs and add the what do you call it, the progressions to, you know, to the actors and actresses charts. Although we don't have a lot of the birth times, do we? Just one more question that's here from Andrea again. A Neptune representing movies and being combust to the sun at this time. What kind of interpretation do you see of, well, Neptune infused with the sun? I mean, the sun sort of overwhelming.
Sure, I did a whole presentation. In fact, this is what I did when I was in India. It may turn into a book as well. What I called Hollywood and the Neptune factor, which is to say that Neptune rules the film industry.
Yeah.
Literally, it's a beam of light dispersed onto a screen. What is more ethereal than that, right? It's very cosmic just in its conception. But I discovered that also the themes of Hollywood movies changed in exact accordance of Neptune's transits through the different signs.
Yes, yes.
So what have we had in the last, since Neptune has been in Pisces, has there been any bigger boom than in the field of fantasy?
Yeah, right. And the incredible, you know, CGI that's just, you know, ramps up more and more every year. And now we're moving into the AI world. Movies will be done with AI. I'm not sure if they'll get to the Academy yet, but, you know, like that's just so possible.
Well, I was actually asked at the end of my lecture in India, I was asked, what do you think is coming next with Neptune in Aries? Where's the movie industry going to go? And I don't recall exactly what I said, but I said something to the effect of, it may be so immersive, it may be so automated, so integral, that we'll be able to create these things ourselves.
Yes.
Without having to go through an intermediary. What is AI but that?
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. I remember when Uranus went into Aries and everyone got on their phones and selfies and YouTube and, you know, like everyone, you know, was a personality all of a sudden. So Neptune into Aries, yeah, we'll just, you know, ramp that up like big time, won't it? And of course, Neptune went into Pisces when we got the phones, it was like, you know, they were not too far apart, you know, and then everyone was a photographer. You know, we all became photographers more than, you know, sort of, so we're all becoming, you know, part of this, you know, big shift in movies. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay, I'm just going to finish up quickly. So to find Ra and his website, Star Presence, of course, he's in Los Angeles, available for readings and, you know, following him.
I'm a consulting astrologer as well, so I don't just do this. So if you would like a reading, go to my website and book it, starpresence.net. I do daily videos on Facebook and Instagram, soon on TikTok and YouTube. But I like to say, no matter, remember from the very moment that you're born, you've got star presence. That's my closing phrase. So fabulous. Remember that. Yeah. We're all part of, someone just said, you know, we're all in a permanent movie. That's true.
Absolutely. It's amazing. Yeah. I love it. Well, sorry, I just want to remind people that we've got a great magazine out, which Ra has written for as well, about Bond. If you can't get the book just yet, you know, it was the kind of introduction, wasn't it, of your book?
It was. It was.
In the first Time Lords magazine.
Let me hawk the book again.
Yeah.
On Amazon, or available through me. If you want a signed copy, let me know.
Yeah, and I've written about the AI revolution that's going on with Saturn in Pisces and Pluto in Aquarius. There's a lot of great articles in the latest issue, so do have a look. It's for free on our website. So you just go to the front page and find what's going on. We, of course, have the Academy of the CIA, our own Academy of Astrology. Rose Marcus is up next to give us a lecture on Pluto in Aquarius. We've had 2 already in the last month because it's such a big topic. So check out that if you would like to join those. And then we have a special guest, Gray Crawford, who's done an amazing sort of look into the Saturn in Pisces with so many aspects involved. So that's a big topic as well. And we hope to see you all again sometime soon. So thanks so much again to Ra, and thanks to all of you for being online. We love that you are with us today. Enjoying the Oscars. I can't wait to, it's my birthday weekend. The 12th of March is the Oscars day.
See, you have star presence.
Oh, there you go. So I'm going to be watching the movies. It's a long weekend here in and catching up with all these great movies. And so Ra, write us out the predictions you made. So I'll post this up with the recording so that, you know, we know what was said, and we can look at it further.
Thank you. Anyone who wants to contact me, you can contact me through my website or through Facebook or Instagram. I'm available on those as well.
Great. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the Oscars weekend. See you later.
You've got star presence.
Thanks, Ra.